All right, here we have the expression the square root of x squared. All right, well, for every real number x, the square root of x squared is going to be the absolute value of x. So depending on what your x is, it's going to be the absolute value of it. So we're going to write each expression in terms of some absolute value. So for this one, it's going to be, absolute value of a negative 5, which is 5. Now this one is going to give us absolute value of x plus 3, which is just absolute value of x plus 3. So depending on what your x is, depends on what you get for an answer here. Now here, this one we could say it's the absolute value of w squared minus 6w plus 9, or what we have to think about really is what is this? Well, that's w minus 3 times w minus 3, which is w minus 3 squared. So we have to bring a little bit of factoring in here to be able to do this one. And so now we can do this one because we know it's going to be looking like this. It's just going to be w minus 3, the absolute value of that. Okay. And so that's how we have to do that one. So sometimes it's not in a form where it's directly you can just get it. You have to actually do some factoring. And then after that, you're in a form where you can actually get the answer. All right. This one we're supposed to evaluate. So we're supposed to plug in 1 and minus 2 into both A and B. So we're going to plug a 1 in here, and we're going to plug in a minus 2. We're going to plug a 1 in here, and we're going to plug in a minus 2. So when we do that, let's look at the 1 for the first one here. So we plug in 1, 5 times 1 is 5 plus 1 is 6. So we have the square root of 6. Okay, now if we want the exact answer, that's where we're going to leave it because that's the exact answer. If they say round it to the nearest tenth or hundredth or a thousandth, then we have to plug it in our calculator and then we can put it into decimal form of whatever they ask for. Now, if we plug in minus 2, that gives us minus 10 plus 1, which is minus 9. Minus 9, the square root of that, that's undefined, or it's going to give us an imaginary number. And so in this case, we just write it, undefined. We don't have to have any answer on that one. Now, if we plug in 1 here, 1 squared is 1 plus 4, so that's going to give us a square root of 5. Now, minus 2, the quantity squared, is going to be 4. 4 plus 4 is 8, so we're going to get the square root of 8 on this one. So the key is you have to remember to put that minus 2 in parentheses. You're squaring the whole thing. A minus 2 times a minus 2 is a plus 4. 4 plus 4 is 8, and so that gives us our solution here. So remembering putting everything in the parentheses is the key to this one here. All right, so now here we're supposed to calculate the hang time for a ball that is kicked 75 feet into the air. Does the hang time double when a ball is kicked twice as high? Use the formula T of x, which is the time at time or the hang time at the height x, 1/2 square root of x. All right, so we're going to say plug in 75. Well, that's easy. Now we have this. Now we have to use our calculator, and that's going to be about 4.3 seconds. Again, it's not asking us to do a specific thing, so we could have put in, 2 or 3 decimal places. But with most times, this is going to be sufficient for something like an equation like this one. Now, if we put it in at 150, well, when we do that, we take the square root of that times a half, we get 6.1. Now, is the hang time twice as big? Well, twice that would be 8.6. That's 6.1. So no, it's less than double. Okay. So that would be how we would solve something like that. We have to plug both of them in, solve it, see if it's double. In this case, sometimes they might say, is it 3 times as high or, half as high or whatever it is. And you just have to kind of figure out what it is based on what they ask us there. All right, so the last thing we want to do is find the domain of a function. And what we need to do is when we take a square root, remember the square root, this has to be positive. To be positive, that means it has to be greater than or equal to 0. And so what that means is we're going to take whatever is under the square root here and put that greater than or equal to 0. And so basically, we're just going to plug that piece in and say whatever that is, set it greater than or equal to 0, solve for the variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this piece, set it greater than or equal to 0, solve for x. And so if we take x to the other side, And well, in this case, they didn't. So this is a key thing. There's two ways to do this one. So we could say, okay, let's take the x over here. So we have 3 greater than equal to 4x divided by 4. And so now we have x, and then we have 3/4. So we read that x less than or equal to 3/4. Okay. Or so then we can rewrite it like that, and we get x less than or equal to 3/4. But here what they did is, okay, well, let's take the 3 over here, then divide by 4. Now, when you divide by a negative with inequalities, we have to remember we have to switch that inequality sign. So that's a key step. So this is a key step. When you divide by a negative or multiply by a negative, you have to switch the inequality. Okay, and if we don't, then we just have to read from the variable to the number. So x less than or equal to 3/4, which is what this represents here. Now here we set that one again. Okay. Oh, so they actually want the domain. I forgot about that. And so if it's x less than or equal to 3/4, then we're going to go from negative infinity up to 3/4. And because we have that equals, we're going to have a bracket. Okay, so that's going to be a key here. Now, this is kind of the interval notation. This would be just our inequality notation. So again, they're going to ask both ways. So depending on which way they ask, you have to know both ways how to represent that. All right, so this one, we have to think about that. Well, if we have x squared plus 4, no matter what we do, no matter what x we plug in here, this is always going to be positive, right? Because if we plug in a -1 here, -1 squared is going to be 1, plus 4 is 5, so that works. If we plug in a -200, -200 squared is going to be positive, and that's going to be 4,000. And so then 4,004, that's going to be positive, so that's going to be there. If we plug in a positive, it's going to be positive. So regardless of the value of x, basically our expression is always going to be positive here. So no matter what we have, it's going to be positive. So it's going to go from negative infinity to positive infinity for our domain on this one. Okay, so that's going to be kind of a nice key step here. And so that's going to be what it is. Okay. All right, so that's all I have for this one. So hopefully that helps you get started here.